Hello, it's November the 19th, 2014. If you're homebound on a snowy night, you could do worse than join our conversation tonight. This is CTV. We come to you live twice a month. It's a call-in show. You could call in a little while. My name's Stephen Durst. I'm a longtime member. With me, another longtime member, and Schweizer. As our guest tonight, we have the Pastoral Care Justice Coordinator from Heartside Ministries, Chaka Holley. Our topic tonight is misogyny. Now, modern misogyny, that's a Greek word that means literally hating women. And if the Greeks had a word for it, you'd know that it's not a recent problem. However, the experiment in equality between the sexes over the last 100 years has been creating a particularly vicious backslash, and not just in countries like Afghanistan or Iraq, but in our own country. We're going to be discussing some recent developments, Gamergate. We'll also be looking at some of the Rob Bliss video concerning street harassment. And speaking of street harassment, this would be a good time to introduce Chaka Holley to talk about her work and her group of women who have been victims of violence and of harassment down at Heartside. So please, Chaka.
I appreciate that. So, like you said, historically this has been an issue. It really isn't something new, but it is something that is getting more and more attention. A few years back, there's a woman named Tatiana in New York who was addressing issues of street harassment using the arts. And since Heartside Ministry is an arts ministry, I thought this would be a great way to address the street harassment that happens at Heartside. So working there, going in and out of the office every day, you see a group of men who are looking at women inappropriately, making inappropriate comments. I've had people make inappropriate comments to me or to others in my presence. It's something that is scary, at worst, frustrating. It's harassment. And so what I decided to do was to start a women's group, not only in relationship to the street harassment, but also domestic violence. All of these are parts of what one would call rape culture. And so when you're thinking about rape culture, domestic violence, street harassment, they all kind of go hand in hand. And hearing the stories of so many women who have had these experiences in the Heartside Ministry, working particularly with women who are in poverty, a lot of them who are homeless, the street harassment is huge for them because a lot of them don't have a home to go to. They don't have a way to hide. So I started the women's group with a specific focus on street harassment and violence against women, and partnered with Sarah Scott, our arts coordinator. And we looked at ways in which we could follow Tatiana's model and use art to bring awareness to street harassment. Part of it is I don't believe that a lot of men know that it's unwanted. It's so ingrained in the culture and community that this is what you do when a woman walks by. This is what you say, that it seems normal, it seems wanted. So we wanted to bring attention to that. We started making art in the group, hanging the art at Heartside in the chapel window. We've taken little strips of paper after the White Ribbon Project, which is also a national project that brings awareness to inequality between men and women. So we made strips and hung them on the pillars, and a lot of men have read those, have come to me and to others asking questions about what is this. Some men have talked about their own changes in the ways that they viewed women, how they've come to understand the problems and issues with this. And women have had a safe space to tell their stories, to talk about their experiences, the fears they experience day to day, just going to and from. So the group meets every Tuesday, 10 o'clock at Heartside Ministry, 54 South Division. We have a confidentiality policy to maintain the safety of everyone in the group. It's open to anyone who identifies as women. We do find that oftentimes trans women are locked out of spaces, and so it's open to trans women. And we also find that trans women generally get harassed probably more often and more violently than other women, especially if the trans woman is a woman who doesn't, what they would say, pass. She gets it much worse.
We should let the viewers know that Heartside is a ministry downtown that helps and counsels homeless people, to quite a few homeless people. But the problem is not just amongst homeless people.
Right.
You yourself have mentioned being harassed downtown by college boys, for instance.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, so we should mention that this is not
Yes.
a problem of just one class.
It's not a problem of just one class. We'll see in the Rob Bliss video that it appears to be a problem of black and brown men, which is not the case. As Steve mentioned, going downtown to Monty's, the Bob, Pyramid Scheme, Bar Devani's, any of the what you would consider to be upper class, college, young professional hangouts, I've been harassed at nearly all of them. You know, especially including racial terms or, you know, racial comments used in the harassment. I've found that the white men have been more likely to touch me than what I've found in the community in which I work. Yeah, so I mean, it's universal. You find it across the board, but I have experienced it worse downtown Grand Rapids in those communities than I have at Heartside, and I'm a lot more fearful to go into those communities. I've kind of decided to stay away from those sorts of crowds because it is scary. And I also know, given the racial implications, that some of these white guys will get a slap on the wrist, you know, it considered not that serious or what have you. So I've just decided to stay away, which is what a lot of women do. They find different pathways to walk to the store. I did that as a child, went around the block as opposed to going down the main street, asked people to walk with them. I mean, you make a lot of decisions based on the fact that there are guys who will harass you just going to the store or the bus stop or, you know, running your daily errands.
Well, to men friends of mine who say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, you know, what's this a problem? I said, well, how do you like being accosted on the street, even if it's just for money, or to be told the good news about Jesus? And now put to it the menace of a sexual threat. Maybe you're shy, or maybe you've been molested, you know, think about that.
Yeah.
But it's good to know, it's good to have you here, Chaka,
Thank
and to
you.
let our audience know that you're not talking out of a ivory tower, that you're down there where it's seen. And now Ann Schweitzer is going to have some comments and talk about some of the Rob Bliss video that she's chosen.
Actually, we've been talking a lot about the behaviors of men, and I was wondering if instead of the Rob, I didn't know Rob Bliss did that video, actually.
Yeah.
Instead of the Rob Bliss video, I was wondering if we could show that second video, the Huffington Post one,
Oh,
where,
yes.
where it's an interview about what men say, why they harass
Sure.
women.
I was
Oh,
hoping
great.
we'd get a man down here to tell us, but they didn't want to get maced, apparently. Tyrone said he would, but he never called me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. I haven't seen this one yet, so I heard about it, but I really want to see
Any
it.
preliminary comments?
Well, there's some women that are interviewed, but it's mostly men in this interview, and they're asked, why do you harass women? And some of the responses are kind of surprising. Is that video ready yet? But it's...
Well, I figure it must work for them somehow, or they wouldn't keep doing it, right?
No.
I don't leave the house.
Yeah, this is it.
This is it?
I may have seen this one, and most of them say it
I'll
doesn't
stop
work.
getting catcalled at least once. It's ridiculous.
I'm surprised to hear that. That's new for me. I'm a little shocked actually.
You know, but your girlfriend's really beautiful though. I didn't catcall her.
That was catcalling?
Girls don't really like guys on the street. I always try to talk to girls on the street though. It's not something that works too much. They gotta try to make themselves seem better, and they'll curse, scream, whatever.
It's my point of view. If a girl comes out in public with tight leggings and you can see something back there, I'm saying something.
Like if you're trying to like walk out and like not have guys try to attract you, like try not to wear like tight clothes.
We don't want to be those guys.
We're trying to stop.
We're just being teenage boys.
It's my right as an American citizen to place whatever I want to say.
But is there intention to get a number? If you're yelling at someone from a car window, I think it's kind of like a power thing.
I always didn't used to wear the headscarf, so when I was in high school I didn't. But after starting the headscarf, I thought, you know, it wouldn't happen just because I wear a headscarf. But it still happens. It happens.
When he's with a group of guys, he kind of thinks that he needs to do it, I think, in a way, in order to prove it to his friends that he's like, you know, macho.
I whistle.
Or noises like we are pets or animals or I don't know.
I did the suck. You know what the suck is?
No.
Do you understand what I'm saying? You have a beautiful body. Why can't I say something?
She's uncomfortable, but she's more, that'll probably be her own like personal issue. Like she's probably insecure.
And all of these men have their own separate lives, that they wouldn't do this to the women that they know.
Do you think you'd be happy if someone did it to like your sister or your mom?
Hell no. If you think about it, yeah, you're still doing that to somebody's sister or mother, and that's wrong.
I think there should be a more respectful way to approach a woman.
So, if you're walking down the street and I see you and I'm like, hey girl, looking right. Of course you're gonna feel uncomfortable. But say, hey, excuse me, you look lovely today, you're more inclined to respond.
It's when someone like really invades my personal space that I don't like that.
Every time it happens, they're scraping like a little bit of a hole, and then by the end of the day, it's a bigger hole, and that bothers you know?
But I don't think that, sorry, sir. But I don't think that's the right way to do it.
So what I got from this video is that there's one guy sitting on a park bench saying, oh, well, I'm just practicing my right to free speech. I can do this if I want to. Teenage boys saying, we're just teenage boys. Oh, but if you make these comments, same comments to my mothers and our sisters, well, that's wrong. And one guy says, well, you know, I know that women on the street don't like it, but I'm going to do it anyway. These, you know, and then they wonder why women mouth off to him or, you know, just say something back to him. You know, why they think they can get away with it. Anyway.
Yeah, I've certainly heard a lot of people say I'm just giving a compliment, or they like it. I noticed that the man you were talking about said it doesn't work for me too much. This was what I wonder. It's like, you know, do they think that maybe 1 out of 1,000 times they're going to find someone whose self-esteem is so damaged that they're going to go, oh, please take me home or whatever?
Yeah,
is that what they're thinking? I wonder because, and the one girl's like, if you're trying to get a phone number, how come you're doing it from a car?
Well, one woman said, I think it's a power thing. And then a guy said, I think they feel like they have to do it because they're proving something to their friends. So I don't think it's even so much of I want to necessarily have a relationship or genuinely get to know this person as much as it is I want to show my power, the control that I have over this person. I'll give an example of times in which guys think you do like it because you, in some ways, have to respond positively. And so what I find is walking down the street, you know, you're just walking, going about your business, and guys are like, oh, smile. Then, you know, you do the little smile, because what happens in my experience is if you don't, then it's, oh, F you, you're not all that anyway, you could speak, you're so rude. You know, so I don't think it's a genuine, I have an attraction for you, as much as it is like the guy on the park benches, I have the right to say something because I can, because I'm this guy, Because if a guy was genuinely attracted to you, he would respect the fact that this is uncomfortable to you, and he would stop. And so the argument for a lot of men has been, well, I have the right, and so I don't get to say anything. So this very selfish response. When a person cares about you or wants to consider a relationship or what have you, then they respect that. And you find a lot of men who have said, oh, I didn't know that was bad, I'll stop. Or some guys who just don't do it because they do know that it's bad. Like you mentioned Tyrone, who said, I used to do this, I stopped because I see that this is disrespectful to women. They don't like it, it doesn't make them feel safe. Well, he genuinely has a concern for the safety of women and their feelings and thoughts.
I would think that anyone who gave it any thought at all would have to realize that. But apparently the people who continue in it are not in any way wanting anything but to intimidate. Yeah. And so his free speech right must be similar to the racist hater's free speech right.
Right.
In other words, it's he has the right, so he's going to make people feel afraid. It's about instilling fear, right?
Yeah. And then blaming the victim. So you're scared, but that's your fault that you're scared.
Right.
Well, I see a lot of people, just trying to say, hi, how are you today? Or your coat is nice or something, just trying to be friendly. And usually we don't want to shut ourselves off from the world. I tend to try to give people the benefit of the doubt and, say hello back, good morning, how are you? And if they say, hey, smile, I'll smile. But, more than not, they think of that as something to, follow you or try to pursue you more. And that's uncomfortable, So,
no one's ever told me to smile. Some people have told me to stop smiling.
Or to stop laughing.
Yeah.
No, that's been my experience too. And so the argument that some men have made, it's just a simple hello, it's just a greeting. I found that not to be the case, that when I do respond in a positive way, then it is seen as this welcome to harass me more. And I'll give an example. I was in Meyer, and I know a lot of people being a minister in the city, a lot of people from downtown, going to visiting different churches, etc. And I like people, so I speak to people. A guy walked by and he said hi. I said hi, and I kept walking. And next thing you know, I got in line and he's breathing over my shoulder. So he took my hello as permission to follow me to the line. And so I'm sitting there scared because, what person just follows you to the line? And it's late at night, because I usually shop late at night when people and their children are gone. And I go outside to my car, this guy is out there. So these are things that are scary to me. It doesn't matter if he was trying to be a friend or be nice or what have you. When it's 1 o'clock in the morning, this guy who just followed you in the store is now standing outside saying something. It's scary. Now he knows the car that I drive, all of these things, all because I said hello. Right. So I'd rather not speak.
Don't you find, though, I don't know, in areas where maybe there's more prostitution and there's women soliciting, it's even worse, because there's guys following you in their car, honking their horn, and yelling out the window, and, what do you do then?
Well, certainly those areas are going to attract those men looking for women. And if they already have that attitude or that plan, then they probably see all women as more or less having a price.
And so a lot of women have, I was reading an article not too long ago about women in the homeless communities who started overdressing. So wearing more clothing, some would call it dressing like a man, wearing lots of hats and heavy coats. And after reading that article, it started to make sense to me, being in the neighborhood that I work in, to see people, women who wear a lot of clothing, even when it's not cold outside. I don't know, Steve, if you've noticed this, but a lot of it is to kind of push off some of that attraction. And if I've seen women who like to curl their hair and put on makeup and, kind of form-fitted clothing, I've seen them depressed because they can't just come down and do artwork or just go down and get a lunch without the harassment of these men, and not just one, but several men. And so a woman literally being depressed because of all of this aggression, negative attention, and again, them not knowing her background, a woman who could have come out of a domestic violence situation, a woman who could have been molested, raped, what have you, or a woman who just doesn't want to have to be harassed when she goes to do artwork. And so, to see this on a day-to-day basis definitely warrants creating a group and a movement to put a stop to it.
We just talked to a woman here who was visibly upset about a karaoke song she heard a couple days ago because it triggered memories and fears for her. And what was that? How a lap dance is better when the stripper's crying, and it's even better when it's against her will. And the whole audience was laughing when she was being traumatized.
I've heard stories of comedians going to army bases, military bases, and doing those kind of jokes, and everybody's laughing, and I'm just sick to my stomach.
Especially since rape is such a big problem, and the military. Perhaps we could go to the military clip that you had.
Yeah, there's one about sexual assault in the military. If you guys want to show that one, maybe 1/5 of the assaults that happen in the military get reported, and only a fraction of those go to trial, and then a fraction of the soldiers of those that go to trial get disciplined. So it's it's a huge problem.
And let's remind you that rape has always been a part of war, but now we have the problem where we have integrated militaries too. So, like I said, the misogyny goes.
We had 19,300 service members sexually assaulted, unfortunately, okay, or inappropriate sexual contact. So what number was that in 2012? Well, unfortunately, it's gone up. It's 26,000 now. So things are not getting better. If this is zero tolerance, as they call it, well, you ought to look into the definition of zero tolerance, because you seem to be tolerant. Now, unfortunately, in our armed forces, we've had a lot of sexual assaults. The armed forces are aware of it. The Pentagon is trying to address it. In fact, in a congressional briefing, they said the Pentagon's high-profile effort to reduce, with a goal to eliminate, sexual assault in the military. They said that is their goal, okay? They're trying to eliminate sexual assault, not just reduce it, but of course you start with reduction. So in 2010, we had 19,300 service members who were sexually assaulted, unfortunately, okay? Or inappropriate sexual contact. So what number was that in 2012? Well, unfortunately, it's gone up. It's 26,000 now. So things are not getting better. If this is zero tolerance, as they call it, well, you ought to look into the definition of zero tolerance, because you seem to be tolerating it quite a bit. And in fact, let me break down the sexual assaults for you. 35% were abusive and wrongful sexual contact. 28% were for aggravated sexual assault and sexual assault overall. And then 27% were for rape. Now, when you look at the sexual assaults that were reported, now the larger number, like 26,000, is what the Pentagon estimates the real number of sexual assaults were. That's based on accounts that were given and anonymous testing of the troops in terms of getting information from them, right? Now, officially reporting it is a different step, and it's a harder step to take, and you'll see why in a second. When you look at that, only 3,374 cases of the estimated 26,000 were reported. Now, that's a very, very low number. Now, why is that? Well, it's because of the people who reported it, 62% felt they were victimized or retaliated against for reporting. And even Republican Representative Mike Turner says, very logically so, when you have a culture that tries to hide the crime, it absolutely encourages it. And that's exactly right. So basically what's happening throughout the military is the real don't ask, don't tell. No. If you got sexually assaulted, don't tell anybody about it. Hush up already. And if you do, we're going to retaliate against you. And oftentimes the women would have to report the sexual assault to their chain of command. And oftentimes the person who did it to them was in their chain of command. And so now, finally, Defense Secretary Hagel is taking action on that, and they're going to change that policy and take out people that are in your own chain of command. In fact, we recently had 2 cases that outraged everybody where colonels wound up overturning convictions on sexual assault, and apparently they had the right to do that, and they're going to look to change that rule as well, saying even though the jury convicted them, we're throwing it out. And why? I don't know. Did they know the guys personally? Did they have a bias in that case? We don't know the specifics of them. But obviously, what it has done as an overall pattern is it has let women in the armed forces know, look, if you report it, probably you'll be harassed and maybe retaliated again and not against and not believed. And in the end, you're not going to get justice anyway. So is it surprising that not as many of them report and a lot of them go unpunished, and that breeds and becomes a festering sore in the military that continues to encourage this kind of behavior. In fact, the sexual assaults involving military personnel now are up to 70 every single day. Isn't that an amazing number? 70 sexual assault in the armed forces every single day. So now, don't worry, the Pentagon's on this, and they put out a recent manual. And Wired magazine explains there's a couple of problems with it. It does not offer instruction to service members on not committing sexual assault. Prevention is treated as a responsibility of potential victims. Now, that's a significant problem, but you might say, hey, listen, this is about helping people avoid it, and so they're just going in that direction. They're not necessarily addressing the people who would be doing this, and maybe they do that through a different pamphlet. Well, that would be a generous interpretation, but the reality is, it also says this, and this is the Sexual Assault Prevention and Response pamphlet, quote, it may be advisable, and this is to the victims, it may be advisable to submit rather than resist. You have to make the decision based on circumstances. I would not have put that in a pamphlet on sexual assault prevention and response. That if you're being raped, perhaps the best thing to do is to submit. Look, it of course depends on the circumstances. A guy's got a gun to your head, a knife to your throat. I don't know. I don't judge. That's not the point, right? But it's a different thing to say to people in advance, if you're about to be raped, don't worry about it. Just submit it. It'll go better. It kind of depends on the circumstances. You see, this is the problem. We have this culture in the military that somehow it is perceived as somewhat permissible, apparently, and acceptable. Well, they got to get rid of that, and they got to get rid of it in a hurry. Now, if you're a woman, I mean, is this the kind of armed forces that you want to join? I mean, I'd be scared of sending any woman that I cared about into that kind of environment and that kind of culture. So this is one of the many problems, unfortunately, our armed forces have. I believe they can fix it, but they better get on it in a hurry. And you, of course, remember that just yesterday, a lieutenant colonel who was in charge of the sexual assault prevention and response team in the Air Force got arrested for sexual assault. Not headed in the right direction.
I remember that. So this story, that must be about 6 months old, was that colonel who was supposed to be heading up their attempts to end sexual assault in the military, was himself caught assaulting a woman in a parking lot. But it's just quite ubiquitous, really.
Yeah.
Let's put the phone number up there too. We want to take some calls tonight. So obviously it's not just a matter of class, and it's even women carrying guns are susceptible to it. So those guys who say, oh, all those women should just be carrying guns and flash them at their street harassers, I don't know if that would fix it either.
No, I think that something should happen. They should train them about it in boot camp, and what was it? The 3 female congresswomen had set up some hearings and asked that the courts, there be a separate court system, not the military court system, for reports of sexual assaults and sexual abuses. So, because they're not doing it. They're not.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any women wanting to go into the military, and it seems like you're going into some kind of slavery.
Well, I'm radical. I would want to abolish the military pretty much completely. But you shouldn't really be surprised that a militaristic culture that, as I said, has used rape as a weapon of war since the beginning of civilization and before, is suddenly going to welcome with open arms women into the ranks as equals and give them the same respect that, well, they don't really respect their own soldiers all that much either.
Well, I've heard that women have been told going into the military warned that you should expect this. So going in, they've been told that. And so again, when you think about this manual that's created, that it's your responsibility to protect yourself. Here's the information. This is probably going to happen to you. So think about how you're going to deal with it. Here's some suggestions, right? Instead of dealing with the men who are actually committing these crimes, these heinous crimes, then it's, here's some nail polish, dip in your glass to make sure it's not spiked or what have you, and it doesn't contain the date rape drug. Did you all see that, the nail polish?
This nail polish, you could you put this nail polish on, and then if there's a date rape drug in your drink, it'll change color.
I did hear about that. I didn't know if it was a hoax or not. But
No, it's
speaking
real.
of date
It's
rape
real.
and drugging women, we should also talk about Bill Cosby tonight, who's been telling us for so long that we should follow some cultural norms and pull up our pants. Apparently, he missed a day in Sunday school when it said, "Don't drug and rape people."
Yes, Bill Cosby. One of the comedians had heard about it and brought it up, and then it kind of spread. Bill Cosby assaulted all these women and even used some kind of date rape drug.
Well, I'd heard about it years before, but he was somehow able to avoid responsibility by making some sort of settlements. And
oh, wow.
So he's been hushing it up for a while now, but apparently the information has come to light, and he's too embarrassed to talk about it or something.
Was it Wayne Brady maybe that did a skit?
Was it Wayne Brady?
I believe it was.
Oh boy,
I think
bad
it
boy
was
Wayne.
him. So, right. I think it was. And so actually after that, Bill Cosby and his wife did an interview with some journalists, and the journalist brought it up, and Bill was just silent. But like you mentioned, he had all these remarks and comments to make about how young black boys should pull up their pants and stop swearing and all of these things. And that's the interesting irony about situations is, like you mentioned, with the colonel who's said to be protecting these women from this and addressing it, is the person who's actually committing it.
Yeah.
And so the same sort of hypocrisy of, I'm going to tell you and teach you how to live your life and do things right, but here's all these claims. And I think it was several claims from what the news said.
Yes, over years.
Yeah, about women who have alleged this with Bill Cosby.
And date, using a drug is obviously malice aforethought. I mean, it's not like in the heat of passion he decided to grope someone in an elevator. It's like he was thinking about what he was going to do.
Yeah, well, rape has never been about passion or sexual desire. It's always been about power. And I think that's one of the misconceptions that people have, is that these are just some horny guys doing this. And it's, they could be horny guys, but they're really seeking power, which is why I mentioned when it comes to street harassment, I think it's the same sense of power as opposed to desire. Like I preached the sermon on Tamar and who was raped by
Judah?
No, the other Tamar.
The other Tamar.
Yeah, David's daughter, who was raped by her brother. And originally, the story is told in that he has this burning desire for Tamar, his sister. So he, with the support of a group of other men, rape her. And immediately after this violent, horrible act is committed, he has this disdain and disgust for her and yells, put her away, get rid of her, because it was never about the desire. It was about the power. Can I get all of these men on board to help me to commit this rape against my sister? Can I convince my father to allow me to lure her into these chambers to rape my sister? Can I get away with it after I've done all of these things? So it's really about the king's son being able to maintain power over this woman as well as over these other men who supported him in this act. And I think it's the same thing you see in the military, these guys who are probably intimidated by these women now being in the military, needing to find some way to overpower them. So again, never about attraction, never about sexual desire, but this power and control.
Yeah, it's not only women in the military that are getting ripped, it's a lot of men
Beta
as well
males too.
Yeah. But what you say, that story kind of reminds me of what happens in the Islamic countries. If some of these more conservative countries, if a woman is outside by herself for some reason and does get raped and she reports it, they blame the victim. She's kind of thrown out of the family.
Yes, well, in biblical law, well, let's not get into biblical law because we have a caller whose name I can't read because my eyes are weak. We have a caller. Is that true?
No, that was an interview that you were talking about.
Hello.
So we have no caller, but we are taking calls.
Yeah, this is me, Dave.
Oh, okay. Can you speak up a little?
This is Dave.
Hi, Dave. Are you going to join the conversation?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm here. You're talking about Crosby right now.
Bill Cosby, yes.
Okay, my opinion on this is he may be guilty or whatever, nobody knows, but I think the idea of just because some people years ago are making some statements like this, that people should give them an opportunity to these women to actually prove that this happened to them. Instead of these people in the news work just just crucifying this man right now. When in the Grand Rapids area, you got prostitution, you got incest with children, everything going on, and you draw one subject on Bill Crosby. I just think that's ridiculous. When what's going on in the community itself. I don't know if you realize that or not. Children abuse, unbelievable. What's going on? And you're talking about Bill Crosby.
Bill Cosby.
Well, Bill Crosby. That might have happened or not happened, but the man doesn't. If they can't prove that he's guilty, then why do you just destroy the man? For what reason are you doing this?
We're talking about the patterns of abuse in the rape culture as a whole and misogyny. I wouldn't want to crucify Bill Cosby on things that are unproven, but he did make financial settlements.
One time. You don't know what that even was for. You can't prove it. You don't know.
All right, Dave. Well, let's let this go and hear your views on the rape culture in the military. Were you listening to the program earlier?
Yeah.
We just finally mentioned Bill just a minute ago. So
yeah, I know. Anytime there's any rape that can be approved, naturally, I'm not for people being able to do that. Number one, but I think until that can be proved, just somebody making a statement, whatever it is, against whether it's a male or a woman, and just people literally Well, that's right. That's right. You know, that's not the way the American system works. That's all I'm trying to say.
As
And
I
there's
understand
so
it, when
much-
Bill Cosby was asked about it, he simply couldn't say anything.
He doesn't have to make a comment, a legal comment. Why would he? He wouldn't have to. He doesn't have to answer to the public.
He could make a blanket denial.
Why would he?
I would.
You
I
would,
be
but how
accused
much?
of-
He's a very wealthy man. You could be some of these women. I don't know that for a fact. They could be just trying to get money. That goes on all the time.
Well, apparently it worked.
Pardon?
If that's what they were doing, apparently it worked.
They didn't. One time they said that there was money paid, and they don't know the reason why he paid money. That's all I'm trying to say. I said, zero in on Grand Rapids. All the business people, the big shots, so many of them have mistresses, all this kind of stuff on the side. They have young girls come up to the place, and all this goes on, and nothing's, and one lady right now in the middle kind of laughing about it. You want to go down to, as far as the hospital downtown, the Spectrum, and check with the amount of abuse of children. Why don't you look into that stuff and bring that up to the community instead of talking about Bill Crosby, who I heard, okay? That's all I got to say. I think it's very unfair until he's proven guilty by the court.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll lay off on Bill Cosby now.
Yeah,
There's enough of
that's
other
all
things to
I
talk
think it's
about.
ridiculous. Okay?
Okay, thanks, David. So,
Well, actually, I mean, I think it's Bill Cosby is a great example in what Dave is talking about, because I think that it's an example of what he's saying in relationship to youth and children being abused, not having the ability to prove their claims that they're making because of who they are, because of the power that the abuser might hold, because of the fame that the abuser might hold. So when you have someone who's young, naive, you know, and they're under the care of someone, then it does put them more at risk for abuse and an inability to prove that abuse. So I'm sure that there probably are a lot of youth who go in and out of the hospitals who don't have any way to tell their stories, or if they do tell those stories, then you know, there are people like Dave and others who say, well, they can't prove it, so stop talking about it, talk about something else, which is why when we saw the military, a lot of people just aren't reporting it. You
How
know?
could the Jell-O guy who does Fat Albert do any molesting, right?
I mean, he's America's favorite dad.
well, Dave seems to us to put it on the same level with, say, someone who keeps a mistress, even young mistress or something like that. And that certainly has to do with the wealth and power aspect of exploitation. So we can look at this within the context of the whole socioeconomic system, and part of the misogynistic backlash of recent decades, I think, has a lot to do with women taking places of power in an economy that doesn't rely on simple brute force as much as it used to. But there's still, David, a huge difference between drugging someone and raping them and, say, keeping a mistress in an apartment because you're her sugar daddy or something. There is a difference.
Sure.
I mean, it's still a pattern of exploitation by the rich and powerful, and we could talk about the problems with capitalism and economic equality while we're talking about power exploitation of women in this context. That's why I wanted to deal with this issue. I mean, it really does connect to everything.
Another issue I wanted to talk about, our phone number is 616-459-4881. Gamergate is something new. It's something that's come up since this summer. And I don't know a lot about it because I don't play games and I don't do online games. But apparently this is typically something, video games have been done by teenage boys and young men, and 20 years ago, we would, walk by the TV and our sons would be playing the games and we go, don't you have anything else to do? And it's hours and hours and hours in front of the TV. Now, every phone has games, every laptop comes with games, online games. Now, half the people doing online games are women. So the demographic has changed. And what I hear about Gamergate, anybody call in if you have more information about this, because I'm curious too, is that the developers of these games, mostly men, about 3% are women. It's in San Francisco is this culture, but what's happened is that they're calling the critics of these games, the reviewers and the critics, they're actually calling them gamer journalists. I kind of take issue with that term, journalist. Would you call somebody who reviews movies a journalist? I always thought of a journalist as somebody who sees multiple sides of a reality issue and then reports on that, But what's happened is that some of the critics, or they're calling gamer journalists, have done poor reviews on some of the games that the men have developed, and some great reviews on some of the new games that the women have developed. And what's happened is that these women have been harassed and doxxed. Doxxed is when somebody will put your personal information out there online, your telephone number, your address, your credit card number, or whatever it is, and then they've had to scramble to get things fixed up. And typically, I didn't know this because I don't play online games, but in the video games themselves, women are portrayed as, I don't know, just tools and things to be used, raped, whatever. And it's changed since women started playing, and women developers of these games have been more successful. And I don't know why it's been taken as far as it has. Have you heard anything about these?
Yeah, I've heard that the University of Utah stopped a woman critic of video games from speaking because of the death threats against her. This woman, you think her name is Zoe Quinn?
There was a Zoe Quinn, and then there was also and I can't think of her name. It was Anita something. That was the one she was a critic, and she was the one who was going to speak at Utah. And she's spoken a lot before. When she got these death threats, she had to cancel that.
So apparently misogyny is also a big problem against men who live in their mother's basements and play a lot of video games. But the video games are, the women, they're basically really busty, and there are things in the game where you beat them up and murder them and rape them and things like that, and even score points for that sort of thing. And for criticizing these things, she herself has become under constant threat from these cyber geeks, and that phenomenon reminded me of the group of the unwilling celibates who are also major women haters, and disowned the shooter a few years ago, or just last year, because they said that being young and handsome and rich, he wouldn't really know how things were for them and why they really hated women so bad, because apparently they can't make any women friends or something. I mean, a lot of this just is not really taken all that seriously, which was the other reason I wanted to use this topic, because very often on the show we pick topics and most people on the left side of the political spectrum all agree on certain things, like stop the XL pipeline, you know, save the dolphins. Oh yeah, we all agree on those things. And I talk to people who agree on all those things, and they're like, oh well, street harassment, that's not a problem. It's like, oh well, it's you know, video games, they don't matter, you know. Okay, so they have some rape problems in the military, but you know, they'll work it all out. And they don't seem to see how it's connected to violence and exploitation and all the facets of our economy and society, and that it's something that's really going to have to be dealt with if we're going to get past this particular self-destructive mindset we're in as a culture. There's my rant. So phones are open, and I'm turning the floor back to you guys. So I wore myself out.
If we want, we can play that third video, the Rob Bliss video.
Yeah, let's do that, because that's getting a lot of comments these days. Someone said they heard about it on NPR recently.
Oh.
So roll the Rob Bliss video. Is this a zombie walk?
I don't know how she...
That's not good. Smile. Hey, what's up, girl? How you doing? Somebody's acknowledging you. They're beautiful. She's in date with you.
Oh, bless you.
Hey, baby. Hey, beautiful. How are you this morning?
Have a nice evening.
Nice. Damn. Damn.
I'm beautiful. God bless. Sexy American Eagle. Hello, good morning. God bless you. Have a good day, all right?
Doing good?
Hey, look at that. It's $5,000. Yeah, bro.
You want to talk? Shall I speak? Huh? We can't be friends or nothing? You don't speak? I'll give you my number. Talk to me? No? Too ugly for you? What's up, man? How you doing? Nice seeing you, dog. How you doing today? Smile. That's not good.
Smile.
What's up, beautiful? Have a good day.
Now, this video came under some criticism for editing out less Latino and less black harassers. Is that true, Chaka?
Oh yeah, it's very true. So a lot of people looked at the video. I think women could definitely relate to her experience, but also there are other issues in the video. If you look at, I think all of the men were men of color. And like we talked about earlier, this is not something that is that just happens in communities of color. Like I said, I get this downtown more so than I do in Hartside with these young white male professionals, and so you definitely see that race issue in there. But again, this video comes from the guy from Grand Rapids, who's also a frequent downtown guy.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, his office is right next to Hartside.
Oh,
yeah, that building right there. I'll show you. Yeah, I think he just moved, and Holler Back, who produced, or who is the organization that produced this film, is also a predominantly white organization. And so their idea of holler back at the men when they say this thing came under criticism by black women who have said, when we yell back or holler back at men, that can lead to violence, for black women. And so a group of women, I believe it was Insight, don't quote me on that, but maybe they created a campaign called You OK Sis. And so You OK Sis is about not hollering back at the men, but checking in with the women to say You OK Sis, because what happens is in these situations, oftentimes the women are, again, blamed for these situations. You're wearing the wrong thing, you're doing the wrong thing, walking in the wrong place, wrong time of day, et cetera, et cetera. So other women joining in and asking, are they okay? And then seeking out men to help address the issues with men, because men tend to respect men more so than they do women, which is the case. We saw a young woman who was murdered in Detroit, in a bar, and she was trying to tell him, I have a man and all these things, which women often do because men tend to respect that more than they do just, I don't want to be bothered.
I heard of a case, someone was saying a woman was talking back to harassers and going, oh yeah, here's my pictures of my babies, you want to be my baby daddy and stuff. I don't know if that's real or what, but anyway,
I saw it.
We've got only a few minutes left, and I want...
well, I'm glad that we have this this project at Heartside. I mean, I think it's really helpful, and I hope that men can learn about it. And I kind of hope that we see more men in the street that can communicate to other men who are harassing that it's not okay, and look out for other women.
Well,
like I said, I wish I had something like that when I was growing up in Chicago.
well, tell us about Chicago.